The call came on a Tuesday. Your sister's house is going up for auction this weekend. I stared at my phone, my heart racing, not from shock, but anticipation. 3 years ago, I discovered my sister Amber had drained the $87,000 medical fund I'd set aside for my daughter's heart surgery. When I confronted her, she laughed in my face. "It's just money, Ellie. Family helps family." Then she bought a lakefront property while my 8-year-old fought for her life. I disappeared from their lives after that, changed my number, moved across state lines, rebuilt everything from scratch. My daughter survived, thank God, but not because of my family's support. Now I stood in the back of the crowded foreclosure auction, baseball cap pulled low, watching my sister frantically whispering to our parents. Nobody recognized me. The auctioneer called the next property, her precious lakefront home. As bidding started, I raised my paddle. The room went silent when the auctioneer announced, "Sold to Eleanor Williams for $212,000. My sister's face when she realized who I was, that moment was worth every penny. Growing up in suburban Connecticut, our family looked picture perfect from the outside. My parents, Richard, a regional bank manager, and Carol, a school administrator, raised us in a colonial-style home with a meticulously maintained lawn. We were the quintessential upper-middle-class American family, complete with summer vacations to Cape Cod and Christmas cards featuring matching outfits. But beneath that polished veneer was a hierarchy I never questioned until I was an adult. My sister Amber was the golden child. 3 years older, effortlessly beautiful, and remarkably strategic about maintaining her status. She'd been homecoming queen, valedictorian, and eventually married into the Prestons, old money from Boston. Meanwhile, I was the practical one, the responsible one, code for plain and unexceptional. I remember my 16th birthday dinner at Rosario's, the fancy Italian place downtown. My parents had invited extended family to celebrate. I'd just been accepted into a competitive nursing program, my dream. When I announced it, my father smiled politely while my mother said, "That's nice, honey," before immediately turning to Amber. "Tell everyone your news." Amber flashed her engagement ring, and my achievement evaporated. I spent the rest of my celebration answering questions about whether I'd be a bridesmaid. Then there was my college graduation. I'd worked full-time while earning my nursing degree, graduating with honors. My parents came late, missing my walk across the stage because Amber had called with emergency renovations issues at her new house. They left early too, boxes of my belongings half-packed in my dorm room. "Amber needs help picking light fixtures," my mother explained, pressing $40 into my hand for dinner. "You understand." And I always did understand. I was the fixer, the steady one. When my daughter Lily was born with a congenital heart defect, I didn't even tell my family at first. By then, I was divorced from Tom, who couldn't handle the medical stress and bills. I'd learned to be self-sufficient. When Lily turned 6 and needed another surgery, I finally reached out. Not for emotional support, I knew better, but because I was drowning financially. I'd been saving for years, working double shifts at the hospital, selling everything valuable I owned. I'd accumulated $87,000, but we needed closer to $120,000 for the specialized procedure. My parents organized what they called the Lily Fund benefit at the country club. It was the first grand gesture they'd ever made for me. I was speechless with gratitude. The event raised another $35,000. We had enough for Lily's surgery, scheduled for 3 months later. That's when my mother suggested something that seemed reasonable at the time. Let Amber manage the fund. She has the financial background. Amber had gotten her MBA and worked briefly in wealth management before becoming a full-time socialite. I agreed, signing paperwork to create a joint account. The money would be safely invested until Lily's surgery date. What I didn't know was that Amber's perfect life was crumbling. Her husband had gambling debts. Their social standing required increasingly lavish expenditures. And that lakefront property she'd always wanted had just come on the market. The betrayal wasn't a single dramatic moment. It was a series of evasions. Calls not returned, banking statements mysteriously delayed, my growing unease as the surgery date approached. Then, finally, the devastating truth discovered through an account login I wasn't supposed to have. 0 balance. All transfers led to Amber. 2 weeks before Lily's scheduled surgery, panic set in. I couldn't reach Amber. My calls went straight to voicemail, texts unanswered. I drove to my parents' house, something I rarely did on weekdays because of my hospital shifts. "She's just busy with the charity gala," my mother said, barely looking up from arranging flowers in the foyer. "You know how these society events are." I didn't, actually. I'd never been invited to one of Amber's functions. "Mom, I need to access the fund. The hospital is asking for prepayment." My father wandered in from his study, reading glasses perched on his nose. "Can't it wait until after the weekend? Amber's hosting the Prestons. It's important for Bradley's business connections." The dismissal was so familiar, I almost accepted it. Almost. "No, Dad. My daughter's heart surgery can't wait." My voice shook. "I need to check the account now." My mother's posture stiffened. "Eleanor, you're being dramatic. Amber knows what she's doing." I borrowed my father's computer, ignoring his protests. 20 minutes of password recovery later, I stared at the screen, unable to process the numbers. Or rather, the lack of them. "There must be some mistake," my father said, looking over my shoulder. "Maybe she moved it to a higher yield account." I called the bank directly. The customer service representative confirmed what I already knew. Systematic withdrawals over the past 2 months had emptied the account. The last major withdrawal, $42,000, had been processed just 3 days earlier. My mother was already calling Amber. I could hear the protective tone, the assumption that I'd misunderstood something. "Honey, Eleanor is here making quite a fuss about Lily's medical fund. Yes, I told her you're busy with the gala. Well, she seems to think the money is gone." I watched my mother's face change as Amber spoke. Not shock, not horror, just calculation. "I see," she said finally. "Well, these things happen. Yes, I'm sure we can sort this out. Of course, family comes first." When she hung up, she wouldn't meet my eyes. Amber and Bradley had some unexpected financial difficulties. They had to leverage some assets temporarily. Leveraged? She stole my daughter's surgery money. My father intervened. "Now, Eleanor, that's a serious accusation. Amber assures us she'll replace the funds." "When?" I demanded. The hesitation told me everything. "As soon as they close on their new property. There's apparently been some delays with the lakefront inspection, but..." I couldn't breathe. She used Lily's money to buy a lake house? "It's an investment," my mother said defensively. "The return will more than cover." "The surgery is in 2 weeks." My parents exchanged glances, that familiar, conspiratorial look that had always excluded me. "Perhaps we could postpone the procedure," my father suggested, "just until things stabilize." I left their house in a daze, driving directly to Amber's McMansion in the exclusive Lakeridge development. Her Mercedes and Bradley's Range Rover sat in the circular driveway. I pounded on the door until Bradley answered, looking annoyed. "Eleanor, this isn't a good time. We have guests coming." Behind him, I could see caterers setting up, arrangements of flowers that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Amber appeared, champagne flute in hand, wearing a designer dress I recognized from a magazine spread. "Oh," she said, her smile tightening. "Mom called. Look, it's just a temporary cash flow issue. We'll figure something out." "You stole from your niece." My voice was eerily calm. Amber glanced nervously at the caterers. "Let's not be dramatic. I'm handling it." "How? When?" She sighed, as if my questions were unreasonable. "The lake house closing is delayed. Once that's done, we'll have liquidity again." "You used Lily's surgery money for a down payment on a vacation property?" Bradley stepped forward. "It's an investment property, and frankly, your attitude isn't helping the situation." Amber touched my arm, her diamond bracelet catching the light. "I promise, we'll make it right. But right now, I have the Westchester Preservation Society arriving in an hour. We'll talk tomorrow, okay?" Then she did something I'll never forget. She pressed a check into my hand for $500. "To tide you over," she whispered. "Maybe the hospital has a payment plan?" I looked down at the check, then back at her perfectly made-up face, her concerned expression that didn't reach her eyes. In that moment, I saw with complete clarity what I'd always been to my family: an obligation, a responsibility, never a priority. "This is a child's life," I said. "My child." Amber's smile didn't waver. "And we'll help. Family helps family, but I really do need to finish setting up now." As the door closed in my face, I heard her instruct the caterer about champagne temperatures. I stood on her perfect porch, holding her insulting check, and something inside me finally broke. I never cashed Amber's check. Instead, I took out a second mortgage on my modest home, maxed out every credit card I had, and begged the hospital's financial assistance program for help. Somehow, between that and a last-minute anonymous donation from one of the nurses I worked with, we cobbled together enough for Lily's surgery. The procedure was successful, but the recovery was grueling for both of us. While my 8-year-old daughter fought through pain and physical therapy, I worked triple shifts to keep up with the crushing debt. My parents called occasionally, always with the same reassurance: "Amber says she'll sort everything out soon." 3 months after the surgery, I received an embossed invitation to my parents' anniversary party. 40 years of marriage celebrated at the Westchester Country Club. I hadn't spoken to Amber since that day on her porch. The invitation felt like a test, one I'd been failing my entire life. I almost didn't go, but something pulled me there, some need for resolution I couldn't articulate. The country club ballroom was exactly as I expected: crystal chandeliers, ice sculptures, a string quartet. My parents, holding court near the champagne fountain, looked surprised to see me. "Eleanor, we weren't sure you'd make it," my mother said, air-kissing my cheek. "You've lost weight. Are you eating?" Before I could answer, they were pulled away by other guests. I stood alone, watching Amber work the room in a red designer gown, laughing and touching people's arms. Beside her, Bradley looked uncomfortable in his tuxedo, his eyes darting to the bar too frequently. I was contemplating leaving when the MC announced it was time for toasts. My father spoke first, telling sanitized stories about their courtship and marriage. Then my mother, elegant in midnight blue, talked about their greatest accomplishments: their children. "We're so blessed," she said, voice thick with emotion. "Our daughters represent everything we value. Amber, who exemplifies success and social grace, who's given us such pride with her accomplishments and connections, and Eleanor," she paused, searching for words, "who has always been so capable. Capable. Like a reliable appliance." Then Amber took the microphone, champagne sloshing slightly. "I'd like to announce something special," she said. "Bradley and I have just closed on our dream property, a magnificent lakefront home that we'd love to invite you all to visit this summer." Applause filled the room. I saw my parents beaming. I heard snippets of conversation around me. Such a power couple, moving up in the world. The MC asked if anyone else would like to toast the happy couple. Without planning to, I found myself walking to the microphone. The room quieted, perhaps surprised to see the other daughter taking the spotlight. For those who don't know me, I'm Eleanor, the younger daughter. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. I'd like to tell you a story about family values. I saw Amber freeze across the room, champagne glass halfway to her lips. 3 months ago, my daughter Lily had life-saving heart surgery. Many of you contributed to her medical fund at the benefit held right here last year. Murmurs of recognition rippled through the crowd. What you don't know is that the $120,000 raised for her surgery disappeared. My mother stepped forward, her social smile fixed in place. "Eleanor, this isn't the time." My sister emptied the account. She used my daughter's medical fund as a down payment on that lakefront property she's just invited you all to visit you all to. The room went completely silent. I saw shock on some faces, discomfort on others. A few people looked away, embarrassed to witness such a scene. Amber pushed through the crowd. "That's not what happened," she hissed. "You're twisting things." "Am I? Should we call the bank right now? I have the transaction records." Bradley appeared beside her, his face flushed. "This is inappropriate. You're embarrassing yourself." I turned back to the crowd. My daughter almost died. While I was working triple shifts to pay for her surgery, my sister was picking out lakefront furniture with money that was supposed to save a child's life. My father grabbed my arm. "That's enough, Eleanor. You're making a scene." I gently removed his hand. "Yes, I am." Finally. I looked directly at my parents. "You've spent my entire life teaching me that I matter less. That my needs, my child's needs, are secondary. I accepted that conditioning for 32 years. I'm done now." Amber was crying now, mascara tracking down her cheeks. Not from remorse, I realized, but from humiliation, the one thing she couldn't tolerate. "I won't be in touch again," I said quietly. "Enjoy your lakefront property. I hope the view is worth it." I walked out of the ballroom, past the whispers and stares. For the first time in my life, I didn't look back to see if my family was calling me to return. That night, I drove home in a strange state of calm. I expected to feel guilt or regret for the public confrontation, but instead, I felt something unfamiliar, lightness, as if I'd set down a burden I'd been carrying since childhood. The aftermath was predictable. My phone exploded with messages, my parents demanding I apologize, Amber alternating between rage and tearful manipulation, even Bradley threatening legal action for defamation. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I changed my number the next day. 2 weeks later, I put my house on the market. The medical debt was crushing, and every corner of that home held memories of my desperate scramble to save Lily. My coworker Sarah, the nurse who'd anonymously contributed to Lily's surgery fund, offered her guest house as temporary housing while we figured out next steps. "You can't just disappear," she argued as we packed boxes. "They're your family." "No," I said, realizing the truth of it. "They're people I'm related to. There's a difference." We moved across state lines to Vermont, where I'd been offered a position at a children's hospital with better pay and regular hours. Lily thrived in the rural setting, her health improving in the mountain air. I legally changed our last name from Harrison to Williams, my grandmother's maiden name, and slowly we built a new life. 3 years passed. I heard snippets about my former family through mutual acquaintances I hadn't quite cut ties with. My parents had taken a second mortgage on their home to help Amber through a rough patch. Bradley's gambling problems had escalated. The lakefront property had been refinanced twice. I felt nothing but distant pity. Then, last month, Sarah called me. "You need to see this." She forwarded an email, a notice of public auction for properties in foreclosure in our old county. Amber and Bradley's primary residence was listed. Not the lake house, interestingly, but their showcase home in Lake Ridge. "Are you going to reach out?" Sarah asked. I should have said no immediately. Instead, I found myself requesting time off work, arranging for Lily to stay with Sarah's family, and driving back to Connecticut. I told myself it was closure, nothing more. The morning of the auction, I sat in my rental car outside the county courthouse watching people arrive. Real estate investors mostly, until I saw them. My parents, looking older and gray, supporting Amber between them. Bradley was nowhere to be seen. Later, I'd learn he'd left the country to escape gambling debts, abandoning Amber to face financial ruin alone. I almost drove away. Then I remembered Lily's scar, still vivid against her chest. The nights I'd worked until my feet bled to pay those medical bills. The casual cruelty of that $500 check. I walked into the courthouse wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap, taking a seat in the back row. The proceedings were formal but efficient. Property after property was called, bid on, sold to various investors and banks. Then, the auctioneer announced, Lot 17, 42 Lake Ridge Drive. Amber made a small, wounded sound. My mother gripped her hand. The bidding started. I watched several investors battle it out, the price climbing to $180,000, then stalling. The auctioneer called for final bids. My hand rose with the paddle I'd registered for earlier. $212,000, I said clearly. The room turned to look at the voice from the back. The auctioneer nodded. Do I hear $215,000? Silence. Going once? Going twice? Sold to bidder number 53 for $212,000. I stood, removing my sunglasses as I walked to the front to complete the paperwork. I passed directly by my family, close enough to see the moment of recognition dawn on their faces. Ellie, my mother whispered, using my childhood nickname for the first time in decades. I didn't acknowledge her, continuing to the auctioneer's table. As I signed the documents, I could feel their eyes boring into my back. When I turned, Amber was standing there, her designer clothes now looking shabby, her face haggard. You bought my house?" her voice cracked. "To get revenge?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt no satisfaction, no triumph, just a dull sadness for what could have been. "No, Amber, I bought it as an investment property. I used her exact words from 3 years ago. I hear real estate is a solid asset class." "Where will I go?" she asked, tears forming. "They're giving me 48 hours to vacate." I handed her my card, Eleanor Williams, pediatric surgical nurse. "There's a women's shelter in Burlington that has excellent resources for financial rehabilitation. I volunteer there sometimes. They can help you find housing and employment." She stared at the card, then back at me. "A shelter? You can't expect me to—" "I expect nothing from you," I said quietly. "That's the difference between us now." My parents approached cautiously. My father looked broken, older than his years. "Eleanor, please, we made mistakes, terrible ones, but she's still your sister." I nodded. "Yes, she is, and I hope she finds her way. But my obligation to absorb her consequences ended 3 years ago." As I walked away, my mother called after me. "What about the lake house? Will you take that too?" I turned, surprised. The lake house? I assumed it was gone. A strange expression crossed Amber's face. "No," she said quietly. It's the only property not in foreclosure. I put it in trust, for Lily." I stared at her, disbelieving. "After you left," she continued, not meeting my eyes, "I realized what I'd done. I couldn't undo it, but I thought, someday, maybe." For a moment, I glimpsed something I'd never seen in my sister before, genuine remorse. "The trust activates when she turns 18, Amber said. "The lawyers have your contact information. I update it whenever you move. I've been keeping track." I nodded once, absorbing this unexpected development. "Thank you," I said finally. "Does this mean—" my mother began hopefully. "No," I cut her off gently. "It doesn't change anything between us, but it does give me hope that people can change." I left them standing there, my sister holding my business card, my parents looking lost. 3 weeks later, I received a cashier's check for $87,000, the exact amount of Lily's original medical fund. The enclosed note read simply, "I'm sorry, A." I donated the entire amount to the children's cardiac unit where Lily had her surgery. As for the Lake Ridge house, I sold it to a young family with 3 children, taking a significant loss to ensure they could afford it. Some investments aren't about money. Amber never did go to the shelter. Last I heard, she'd moved to Arizona and was working as an office manager at a small accounting firm. We don't speak, but sometimes on Lily's birthday, flowers arrive with no card. I let Lily keep them. It's been 5 years since that auction day. Lily is 13 now, her surgery scar faded to a thin silver line that she proudly calls her warrior mark. We've built a good life here in Vermont. I'm the head nurse of the pediatric cardiac unit, and our little farmhouse has finally started to feel like home. Sometimes people ask if I regret my decision to cut ties with my family. The truth is complicated. I regret that it was necessary. I regret the years I spent trying to earn love that should have been freely given. But I don't regret protecting my daughter or finally protecting myself. The lake house sits empty most of the year. I've never visited it. When Lily turns 18, she'll decide what to do with that property and the complicated legacy it represents. Until then, we focus on building something my family never quite managed: genuine connections based on respect rather than obligation. The most important lesson I've learned from all of this isn't about revenge or even justice. It's about boundaries. It's about recognizing when the cost of maintaining a relationship exceeds its value. Sometimes the healthiest family you can have is the one you create for yourself. I look at Lily now, strong and thriving, and I know every painful step was worth it. My daughter will grow up understanding her true worth isn't measured by comparison to others, that her needs matter, that some lines, once crossed, cannot be uncrossed, and that's okay. Family isn't just blood. It's choice, it's action, it's showing up when it matters most. If you're struggling with toxic family dynamics, know that you're not alone. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away and build something better. Your story doesn't end with what was done to you. It continues with what you choose to do next. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing and sharing. Every like helps this channel reach others who might need to hear that they're not alone in these complicated family journeys. Thank you for listening to my story.